Hey, welcome to another Valley Forged. This is by far the most difficult video I've ever made, and I've had several channels, and there is so much information to try to just compact into this simple subject of CO2 versus diode laser that is difficult to put into one video. But I am going to do my best. And just realize this might be a little long and it might have to go back and forth because there's just so much nuance to it. And yes, I made a video about this not that long ago, but so much has changed. And there's so much to talk about with these new diode lasers that are ranging from, 30 to 40 watts already, and who knows where they're going to go. And what you need to know about those. Maybe you're thinking about getting one. What's the difference? Why should I or shouldn't I? And so I'm going to get into everything that I know and everything that I've learned from others. So like and subscribe if you're super into lasers like I am. I talk about anything when it comes to lasers, CO2, and diode, and how to start your business and how to improve them. So let's try to start getting into this. As I said, I have made a video about this, and there is many longer answers that I go into, so you're welcome to go watch this. I'll try and condense everything that I said in that video. So we got to start out right with the beginning of what is the difference between a CO2 laser and a diode laser. Well, the short answer is generally you have a glass tube in the back of a CO2 laser that's going to shoot this invisible beam, infrared, through a few mirrors and down at your material. Now, this is likely going to vaporize that material. So if you get your settings right, you can have very little charring on your larger pieces of wood. And it does work different, but there's a lot of similarities. So it's important to kind of just see what the differences are, which we will get into over time. A diode laser is pretty much a solid state thing. Everything that's going on as far as creating that laser is mostly, it's in that cartridge. This gives a lot of benefit as far as you're just not going to need all that extra stuff that you need with the CO2 laser because everything's kind of self-contained. It is a different type of laser. It is a blue laser, generally, and you can see it. You're not supposed to look at it, of course, but you can see it. Whereas with with the CO2 laser, it can be a little bit more dangerous sometimes because you wouldn't even know that it was on, and you could be looking at something that could be damaging your eyes. And up until now, the big difference between the two has been expense. And as I had stated in my last video, the comparison was kind of easy in a lot of ways. As an entry-level laser, the first CO2 laser of any consequence was about $3,000. Unless you were going to have a K40, which was the 40-watt CO2 laser. But that bed size is only 8 by 12, so you're kind of limited in what you can make with it. It's a cool little machine. I have one. I have the Monport. You're welcome to learn all about it in the videos that I have. But that was kind of your only option as a CO2 laser under around $2,500, $3,000. So you're pretty much going to use a diode for cheaper, unless you wanted to cut acrylic. Because with a diode laser, you're generally getting about a 400 by 400 millimeter bed, which, you can do some decent size work there. And you can get an extension. Again, I show you in my video. I have the Ortura Laser Master 3, which is pictured here on the right. And, I have the extension. I can do 850 millimeters by 400 millimeters, and I can make wall hangings. I can make big projects. They take a long time. You can't cut very deep mine's a 10 watt, but you can do nice large projects. And so really for a decent price between $400 and $1,000, you were able to make some amazing things using a diode laser. But as I said, extremely limited in what you could cut. That game is changing quickly. So I'm going to go over some of these new diodes really quick. Atomstack comes out with a 33 watt. Atzer comes out with a 35 watt. And xTool, not to be outdone, comes out with a 40 watt diode laser. Now you may be saying, wow, I thought you just said the entry level CO2 laser was 40 watts. And then now you're looking at a 40 watt diode laser. Yes, and it's even more interesting than that, because with a CO2 laser, you're generally not supposed to run the tube at more than, just keeping it simple here, 60 to 70% of your power. So say you have a 40 watt laser, you're really only not supposed to run it too much above 30 watts, right? And depending on your tube, you may not even should be running at that. Where with a diode laser, you can pretty much run it 90 or 100%. You know, the jury is still out on that, but from all that I've learned, and I've done quite a bit of research on it, as long as you can keep this thing cool, because it is a solid state, you can run this thing at 90 or 100%. So you're really getting quite a bit more power than you would from a CO2 laser. Is that the end of the story? Of course not. Now, what they're doing with these new diode lasers is they're stacking, as you can see, 5.5 watt lasers. So what kind of problems are going to come when you start stacking 6, 8, 10 of these things? Or who knows how many, 20. How is that going to change how these things work? Of course, you're going to be running a lot more heat. You've got a lot more things to go wrong. And the dot size is going to change. And so which of these diode manufacturers is able to best concentrate that beam is probably going to be the winner when it comes to making the higher and higher levels here. Now you see that Atzer says 0.06 by 0.1 millimeter compressed spot. Well, see, that's going to be very important. Now, what is the xTool actually going to be? What is the Atomstack actually going to be? And I'd love to see these head to head. Because are they still going to be great for engraving, or are you going to need a different cartridge if you want to do nice engraving? I would imagine that at first you might see some pretty bad spots, but this technology is moving quickly. And within a year, you might see some very good spots for these 40, 50 watt, 60 watt, 100 watt diode lasers. It's a very exciting time to be involved in this. Now, I did pop over to a Louisiana Hobby Guy on Sunday. Now, you'd have to go to the live section. You won't see this on his videos. And he does talk a bit about the difference between CO2 and diode and whether you can run a diode. He confirmed what I had looked at. I think you can run these things quite a bit higher. But I suggest you go like and subscribe to him. He is soon going to do a battle of the 20 watt lasers. So you're going to see the Atomstack and you're going to see the xTool and Atzer on their 20 watt lasers go head to head. And I think that the winner of that is probably going to end up being the winner when it comes to the higher power as well. I personally am kind of rooting for the Atzer. They're kind of a new kid on the block, but they seem to be doing a great job. And if you look at the deal just for price, I'm not affiliated with them. They've never given me anything. But for $1,349, so $1,350, you're getting the extension with this as well and the air assist. Now that seems like a really great deal. You're going to be able to make big projects. You're going to be able to cut very deep, very large pieces, and you're going to be able to do it faster. So all around, this just seems like a great machine. The xTool is going to be a bit more powerful. The issue that I have is not only are they quite a bit more expensive. I mean, this is just for the cartridge here, you're not actually getting the whole machine for $999. So you're probably looking at $2,000 to be able to buy the xTool, and that's without an extension kit. And something else Louisiana Hobby Guy mentioned in one of my comments is that this is a proprietary software. Now, you can use Lightburn, but for a lot of the functions, you cannot. So you're going to have to kind of go back and forth between the two. And I really recommend just learning Lightburn. No matter where you go in the laser business, it's probably going to serve you very well. So if you really get to know this software, when you're running a $100,000 business, which you could be not that long, and you've got two 150 watt lasers, you're probably still going to be using Lightburn. So you might as well learn it. I am kind of down with that. When it comes to the Atomstack and the Atzer, they're both running Lightburn. And not to mention, the prices are just going to be less. You're looking at $1,300 here for the Atomstack, 30 watt. This is also without the extension. Now, I had an Atomstack, and it just wasn't for me. But that is not to say that they're not great machines, and I have nothing against them. You can go back to some of my first videos, and you review the Atomstack that I did have. I have not tried the xTool, and I have not tried the Atzer, so I cannot really say. But I do hope to try them both out soon when they come out. I would love to see a battle between the 35 watt Atzer and the 20 watt Atzer, just to see the difference in not just cutting, but also in how they engrave. Maybe even throw in the 10 watt there, just to see the differences in what you're paying and what you're getting and what you may need. And so that's something that I would love to do in this channel. So again, we're getting into CO2 versus diode. So what is the positives between having a diode laser versus having a CO2 laser? With the diode laser, you're getting more usable power for the wattage. Even if you have the best, like a Reiki tube, and they're pretty expensive for your CO2 laser, you're still not going to be able to use 100% of the power that it says on the laser tube. Size for the money. Now, when we start talking about the CO2 lasers, when you start getting the real difference between the price of a CO2 laser is not how much power it has. That is important, but every one of these lasers that I'm showing, this happens to be Thunder Laser, but for any of these larger CO2s, you can extend and put a larger laser tube on these. But what you cannot do is extend the bed. So what you really want to do is get the largest bed you can for your sieve. So here it says engraving working area, and the biggest one that'll fit in the space that you have. But once you get a bed size, it's very difficult to change that, whereas changing the tube is not. And you can see with the larger bed size how quickly that price goes up. Now, obviously, you're going to see the laser wattage go up on these, but basically, bed size is your most important thing. So that's a positive and a negative when it comes to diodes. Right away, you're getting a 15 by 15 or 400 millimeter area that you can engrave in. So you can do some decent sized stuff. And then all of these have an extension that you can get. And of course, I mentioned that the Atzer already has the extension so that you can run pretty big jobs that you could put on your wall and be proud of. You could sell, you could do signs. I mean, it's going to be slow. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be very difficult to run a full-time business with the diode laser, even if it's more powerful. They're just slow. They were not built to do commercial work. Now, if you're going to go to the farmer's market once a month and you want to sell stuff, this is going to be great. A part-time job, getting into lasers, seeing, do I love them? Have I fallen for them the way that Eric has? And is this something that I want to do full-time? These are going to be amazing because you will literally be able to do the same things for the most part that you were going to do on your CO2 laser to see if it works for you. And you can do it at, obviously I just showed you, way, way cheaper 1/10 the price. But it can't do everything. I'm going to get into that in a minute. It's just, things get too complicated, so I can't say everything at once. This is a self-contained unit. That's another great thing. It's like you can pick this thing up and you can move it somewhere else. When you have a CO2 laser, it's pretty much going to be where you stuck it. With a diode laser, you've got no mirrors, you've got no water chiller that you've got to deal with, you've got no glass tube you've got to deal with. If anybody out there, if you've aligned your mirrors on a CO2 laser, you know what I mean. When you get them dialed in, they're amazing, but sometimes getting them dialed in, what a pain. What are the cons of a diode laser? And there are quite a few. I mean, number one, many of you know, acrylic. You're just not going to do it. You could do really dark acrylic, but I wouldn't call that doing acrylic. I mean, just because you could do one or two colors. Anything light, like even white paper, can be difficult or shiny. But any types of clear acrylics or slightly tinted acrylics are going to be very difficult, even with these higher power diode lasers. So a lot of people's job is making keychains or something like that, and you're going to want to do acrylic, and it's just going to be difficult. So something you should know. They are a finite size. So although you're getting a much larger bang for the buck, you're kind of stuck at maybe 15 inches by 30, 35 inches or 850 millimeters by 400 millimeters. That's pretty much all you're going to get. And once you've done that, that's it. Now, there are ways you can kind of set this on top of the material and maybe extend it a little, but that's very difficult, to make anything bigger than the sizes that I've talked about. Probably not something I would advise. So although you're getting a pretty large bed, it is finite. The tech, when you're talking about these 30, 40, 50 watt diode lasers, this is an unproven tech. We don't know how big that dot size is actually going to be. It's not a circle, it's a rectangle. And how big is that rectangle going to be? When you cut up and down or you cut sideways, it's going to be two different sizes. And so how is that going to affect what you're doing? Is engraving even going to be good when we start getting up to 35, 40 watts? And is that going to work for you? Now, a 5.5 watt diode is amazing for doing engraving. Problem is I can't cut out most of the things that I engrave. It does create a pain in the ass. So for me personally, ideally 20, 30 watts would be great. If this Atzer can do pretty good engraving and great cutting, that will work for me. I really love to do the cutting more than engraving. I want to be able to do 1/4 inch without having to do 3 passes. If I'm doing a hardwood, it's a pain. And the more passes that you do, the more chances that you have of a mistake happening. So I really like to do things in one pass when I can, but I want them to be clean. So that may end up being a pretty big con. We don't know yet. And that unknown nature of it, when you're spending more and more money, $1,350, $2,000, it starts becoming important when you're like, hey, I'm not sure this is going to do what I want it to do. Should I wait? But then you wait, and then the next thing comes out, and the next thing, right? This is the classic problem you have with, say, like computers or cameras. Well, now we're starting to have it with lasers, which is kind of fun, but it can be scary when you're trying to make a purchase. Enclosure. Everyone that we're talking about here does not come with an enclosure. So I run mine outside, but that is one thing that a CO2 laser almost always has, is an enclosure and a way to get that material that you're destroying out from your face or your house. So that is something to think about, especially if you're getting in the extension, which I do recommend. Well, most of these companies don't sell an enclosure for the extension. So say you were to get this Atzer. Now, how are you going to deal with that? How are you going to deal with the air? Now, the diode laser does tend to burn instead of vaporize, so you're probably going to have a lot more charring on the sides of your wood than you might with a perfectly tuned CO2 laser. But again, if you're going to pay the price for that, you should get what you're paying for, right? So let's switch over to CO2. Let's see some of the things of why you might just go ahead and jump up to getting a CO2 laser. Now, I showed you the prices. You are going to pay quite a bit more money. But if you are going to do this seriously and for a business, there's really no other way to go at this time. But that is pretty much your biggest thing, is the cost, but also the space. There's a lot more to a CO2 laser. You've got to deal with chilling the water. You've got to deal with beam alignments. Just the size of where you're going to put it. These things are large, especially if you're going to be doing a business. How are you even going to get it to where it is? I've seen so many times where people have had trouble getting it from, say, it's dropped off. How do they even get it into their garage or anything? These are no joke. So definitely want to think about these things. But you can cut acrylic any type all day long. You can make so much at once. They're going to be faster, generally more powerful. And they're considered maybe a real laser. And that's the thing, is even if you were to get a K40, the smallest one, once you learn how to do that, you got to deal with the beams, you got to deal with the tube. Once you learn all of those things, it's going to help you all the way up, no matter which laser you get. They're basically going to work in the same way. Same type of maintenance. It's a real laser, quote unquote. And as I said before, if you're running a business that you're selling every day or every week, you're going to be able to keep up with what you sell. It is not uncommon for my 10-watt diode for me to spend half the day, making one project. Well, you're just not going to be able to do that if you're selling 5 projects a day. So where do I think is the sweet spots here? I've kind of gone over pretty much everything. I know there's quite a few things I'll probably leave out because it's such an important topic and detailed. But where do I think the sweet spots are? If you're engraving, that's such a sweet spot. You can get a 5.5 or a 10-watt laser. If you've got something to cut out your material and you're going to do a great job with engraving, you probably don't need anything else. Why spend so much more money? So, $500 or $600, you've got your 5 or 10-watt diode, you are set, you are done. If you want to do acrylic, so say you have a little keychain business or something, then you're probably going to want a CO2 laser. So a K40, maybe the Mon port is great for you. Now, with those, you're probably going to have to learn a lot. They're not going to come like set up, like just plug and play. You're going to have to get into this. The diode lasers are a little bit easier on the setup. They do tend to work right out of the box, if you're lucky. Next step up from that, I would say sweet spot right now, 20-watt laser. They're kind of proven. You kind of get what you're getting. I would probably, the Atzer 20-watt might be a great pick for a lot of people. Probably pick it up for around $1,000, maybe everything you need. It'll do decent engraving. It's going to do pretty good cutting for the price that you're paying. It's just going to be amazing. I would say you could start a small business with a 20-watt Atzer. You'd probably do pretty well. And then as you grow, you'd be saying, hey, I'm selling this stuff. Then it's worth maybe getting a larger CO2. Why I don't recommend the xTool? I may change my mind on this, but as I said, the xTool is a proprietary software. It doesn't do everything in Lightburn, and I kind of want one that is made to work with Lightburn. I guess not to mention that every time that I look at anything, anywhere, the xTool commercial pops up, and I mean, even here, I just popped this up. Look, upper right-hand corner, you've got the xTool commercial. What is this, $289? It's certainly not for the machine. So just the advertising kind of turns me off a bit, but it's probably a very capable machine. 40 watts is really cool that they've come out with this. And I am very much looking forward to seeing this in action and seeing these pitted against each other to see who will be the king of the new diode lasers. And where is this going? I mean, are we going to see 70, 80, 100 watts worth of diode lasers soon? What is that going to look like? And how much is it going to cost? Are we going to see the prices of all of these come way down as this technology moves on? You know, I wouldn't be surprised if next Christmas that all of these cost half of what they cost now, because they will be moved on to all this new stuff. What is Atzer going to come out with? You know, what are some of these other companies? Are they going to keep up? Are they going to go out of business? It's such an interesting time to be in lasers. I'm absolutely loving it every day. Now, I apologize in advance that there's so much here that I've missed. Please leave a comment. Let me know, what did I miss here? The important things, I'm positive something. I'll try and leave it in the first comment or something. But such an interesting subject. So like, subscribe. We're going to keep talking about this, and let me know what else you want to talk about. And I will see you in the next one.